Warm greetings to all my loving viewers. Hope you all are safe and sound and doing well in your studies also. In this presentation, we will read, understand and comprehend the text The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh, which is the first chapter of your main textbook Hornbill. But before that, please like, share and subscribe my channel English Medium and don't forget to press the bell icon for my latest videos. Let us understand the title of the chapter first. The Portrait of a Lady. The literal meaning of portrait is a sketch, picture or photograph of someone. It also means the description of someone or something. And in this title, a lady refers to the grandmother of the author Khushwant Singh. The story revolves around the old lady, that is the grandmother of the author, and as a portrait never changes, in the same way we find that the behavior of the grandmother never changed in the story, or you can say since the narrator had known to her. The story gives a description of both the physical appearance and the characteristics or the character traits of the grandmother. And thus we can say that the title is quite justified and appropriate for this particular story. Now let us begin the text. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. So the author begins by saying that like everyone's grandmother, his grandmother was also quite old. He had known to her since last 20 years and he has seen her always so old with wrinkled face only. He says that he had heard from others that once upon a time she was young and pretty as well, and she also had a husband. But for the author, it is quite hard or difficult to believe. My grandfather's portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered his best part of his chest and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. So further the author gives a description of his grandfather's portrait or picture that hangs above the mantelpiece in their drawing room. Mantelpiece means a wooden, metal or stone structure over and around the fireplace. This structure, which is built over the fireplace, is known as a mantelpiece. So his grandfather's portrait hang above this mantelpiece somewhere here, and he describes that his grandfather was wearing loose-fitting clothes and a big turban in that picture. Most of the good part of his chest was covered with his long white beard, and he looked that he was at least 100 years old. So seeing that picture of his grandfather, the author says that it was even hard to believe that he could have wife or children, but he could only have lots of grandchildren only. So in this way, for both his grandfather and grandmother, the author hardly believes that they were ever young. As for my grandmother, being young and pretty, the thought was revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. So now again, coming back to his grandmother, he says that the idea or the thought that she was ever young and pretty is quite revolting, which means that the thought that the author's grandmother was once young and pretty raises a doubt in the mind of the author. He finds it too hard to believe. Further, he says that the grandmother often used to share the games she used to play when she was a child, but for the author, they were quite awkward and undignified, means of low dignity. The fact here is that the games were neither absurd nor undignified, but as we have seen that the author doesn't believe that his grandmother was ever young and pretty or she was ever a small child, so she picturizes her grandmother in that old age with the wrinkled face and the back bent, playing all those games. So that particular picture or imagination of the author seems to be absurd and undignified to him. The author also says that when the grandmother used to share all those games about her childhood, it seemed to be like the fables, means the imaginary stories told to her by some prophets. Prophets means the saints or the monks, which now she used to narrate to all of them. So even they did not believe on those stories which the grandmother used to share about her childhood. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her, old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. So here the author gives the physical description of the grandmother and says that she was short-heighted, fat and slightly bent from the back. Her face was a crisscross, or you can say that was a web of wrinkles which ran from everywhere to everywhere, means all over her face she had wrinkles, and she had been like that since the time they had known her. The author says that she was that old, that terribly old, that she could not grow older than this, and it seems that the time had stopped there for her. He says that he can not believe that she was ever pretty, but she was beautiful. Now, what is the difference between pretty and beautiful? Pretty is someone or something that looks nice on the outside, whereas beautiful is something or someone that is in every way a beauty, inside and outside. So here he refers to say that he won't believe that his grandmother was ever a good looking lady, but yes, she had an inner beauty, the beauty of her character, the beauty of her nature and values, which he always respected and appreciated. She hobbled about the house in spotless white, with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. So, as she had a bent back, she used to walk a little awkwardly, and to balance herself, she took the support of one hand at her waist. She used to wear spotless white clothes all the time, and she used to have a rosary in her hand, to which she used to count its bead and tell the prayers. This is the rosary which the old people or the religious people always carry in their hands. They count its beads and utter their prayers silently. So the grandmother used to do the same. Her silver locks means the bunch of hairs. And why they were silver? Because they all had turned white. So she used to keep her hair mostly untied which used to scatter over her pale, puckered face. Pale means a little yellowish or ill or sick, and puckered hair means unattractive. So her hair used to scatter on her pale, dry, unattractive face, and one could see her lips constantly moving, uttering the pairs which were mostly inaudible. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. So here, the author beautifully compares her grandmother with a winter landscape and says that she was an expanse of pure white serenity, which means that it refers to the calm, peaceful, and serene character and conduct of the author's grandmother. Okay, so serene actually means peace, quietness, calmness. So here the author refers to say that by her character and conduct, she was an emblem of peace, calm, and composure. She is compared to the peaceful winter landscape in the mountains. She was always attired in spotless white clothes and had silver hair. She thus presented a picture of pure white serenity. So a very beautiful comparison has been drawn here by the author. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city, and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. So after giving her physical description, the author talks about their relationship, which was quite cordial. They were just very good friends. The author says that when his parents moved to the city, they left him with his grandmother and they lived together constantly. Their daily routine was that the grandmother used to wake him up and get him ready for the school. When she used to give him a bath and dress him up, all the time she used to sing the prayer in a monotonous way. Monotonous means without any change. She believed or she expected that the author would learn those prayers while listening. But the author says that he listened those prayers because he loved her voice, but he never took the initiative to learn them. Then she would fetch my wooden slate, which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot and a red pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After a breakfast of a thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. So after this, she would make a bundle of a clean washed slate, a small earthen ink pot and a red pen, and would hand it over to the author. She would fetch him a stale chapati. Stale means the leftover food of the previous day, on which she would apply some butter and sprinkle some sugar. So that was the breakfast that the author had, and at the same time she would carry several chapatis, the stale chapatis, for the village dogs as well. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. While the children sat in the rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus, my grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time, the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw at them. So, the author says that his grandmother accompanied him to the school every day. The reason was that the school was attached to the temple. The priest would teach the children the alphabets and morning prayers, and the children used to sit in rows and repeat those prayers singing in chorus or in group. While the children used to do this, the grandmother would sit inside the temple and read the holy books. When both had done, they would walk back to home. While returning, they would feed the street dogs with the stale chapatis that the grandmother used to carry. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. Now what happens that when the author's parents were properly settled in the city, they called the author and his grandmother to stay with them, and that brought a big turning point in their relationship. A turning point refers to the point where the author's relationship with his grandmother changes drastically after they move to the city house. Although they share the same room, a sort of distancing occurred in the relationship, and the main reason was that the grandmother could no more accompany the author to his school because he used to go by a bus. Moreover, there were no street dogs, and the grandmother had to satisfy herself by feeding the sparrows within the courtyard of their house itself. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English word and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught in English schools and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. So as the time passed, they had less interaction with each other. In the beginning, the grandmother continued to wake him up and get him ready for the school. When he used to come back, she would ask what was taught in the school. The author would share some English, Western, and scientific terms with her that were taught in the school, which the grandmother did not like. She was also unhappy because she was now unable to help the author with his studies. At the same time, she did not believe in whatever was taught in these English schools, and she was also disappointed that there was no teaching about God and religious books in the modern English schools. One day, I announced that we were given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentlefolk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. So one day, it so happened that the author came from school and announced that they were given some music lesson in the school. This really disturbed the grandmother because she believed that music is something undignified according to her. It does not have any association with the gentle people, and it is only meant for the beggars and harlots. Harlots means the women who sing and dance to fetch money from men. So as she had her own beliefs, she did not like the concept that these English schools were providing music lessons to their children. She did not speak much, but her silence meant disapproval for the music classes. After that, even she did not talk much with the author. So here you can see that without much genuine reason or without anyone's fault actually, the gap between the author and the grandmother became wider and wider day by day. Most probably this is what we call a generation gap. It is nothing but lack of acceptancy from both the sides. On one hand, the old generation is not able to accept the new changes in the society and trend at the cost of the old customs, rituals and beliefs. And on the other hand, the new generation is bound to accept the new changes and to flow with the current, to cope up with the situation or the current society and the changes. So we cannot say that anyone is at fault, but it willingly or unknowingly builds a gap between the two generations, which is sometimes even not a gap. It becomes a gap which sometimes is not able to fill as well. So the generation gap has been beautifully exemplified here between the author and the grandmother. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. So now, worse than the previous situation, what happens that when the author's school education was over and he was admitted in the university, he was given a separate room, and the only common link of friendship between him and his grandmother was broken. The grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation, which means that the author's grandmother passively, means unwillingly, accepted her secluded life. Secluded means lonely or deserted life. After she gradually loses touch with her grandson, she rarely talks to anyone in the house and was busy spinning the wheel and reciting her prayers. She would only relax in the afternoon for some time when she would feed the sparrows. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of little birds collected around her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. So, this is how she used to feed the sparrows. She used to sit in the veranda, broke the bread into little pieces. By the time hundreds of little sparrows would sit around her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirping, which refers to the noise, confusion and chaos caused by the chirping of the sparrows that scattered and perched around the author's grandmother. Hundreds of sparrows collected around her and created a noise by their continuous chirping. Some of them sat on her legs, a few on her shoulders, and some even on her head. But she never disliked it. She smiled and never drove them away. That half an hour was the happiest time of the day for her. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was even not sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherish the most moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. So finally, after finishing his college, when the author decided to go abroad for the higher studies, he knew that his grandmother would be upset with his decision. He had to be away or in abroad for 5 years, and he says that at the age of his grandmother, one could never tell. One could never tell means one could not be sure. Here the author means to say that he was not sure that after coming from abroad after 5 years, whether he would be able to see his grandmother alive or not. But he also adds that his grandmother was quite sure about it. She was not even sentimental, means she even did not emotionally break down as the old people generally do in such situations. She also came to the railway station to drop or to say goodbye to the author, and she did not talk or show any emotions. Her lips constantly moved in prayer, and she counted the beads of her rosary. While the author was boarding the train, she silently kissed on his forehead, and the author thought that that might be the last physical contact between him and his grandmother. But that was not so. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. So that was the wrong idea of the author, that she might not be able to see his grandmother after coming from abroad, because when he came back, he found that his grandmother had come at the station to receive him. She did not look even a day older. She looked as he had left her. When she clasped means embraced or hugged. So when she embraced the author, he could still hear her reciting her prayers. She was not talking much, but the author says that even on the first day of his arrival, the happiest time that she had spent was with her sparrows. He also adds that now she spends more time with them, and with a frivolous rebuke, which refers to the casual and light-hearted rebukes of the grandmother to the sparrows. That day she realized that she would die soon, and so was having some fun with the sparrows by scolding them for small mistakes. The grandmother had developed a special bond with the sparrows. So on that day she was talking more with the sparrows. She was scolding them on their small mistakes and mischiefs. Most probably it was so because she had realized that she would die soon. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum and started to sing. For several hours, she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. So by the evening, a sudden change fell upon her. She did not pray, rather she collected the women of the neighborhood and she sang by playing an old drum. Sagging skin means loose skin, and dilapidated means not in a good shape or form, very old. It points to the shabby and deteriorated condition of the drum. For several hours she beat the worn out drum and sang the songs related to the homecoming of warriors. So she associated the author's coming from abroad as if a warrior coming back home after winning a battle. So she enjoyed, she expressed her feelings not by talking much but by in this way, by this grand celebration. The author and the family had to persuade her, means had to convince her to stop that, to avoid her overstraining, means overstress. And the author says that it was for the first time since he had known his grandmother that she did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. So the next morning the grandmother fell ill. The doctor said that she would be fine, but the grandmother did not think so. She announced that her death was near, and the last time or the last moments of her life she wanted to spend in reciting her prayers, and she avoided talking to anyone in the family. We protested, but she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face and we knew that she was dead. So what happens after this, that though the family members did not agree to this, they protested on her this idea, but she ignored their protest. She laid down peacefully on the bed, reciting her prayers, counting the beads of her rosary, and before they could suspect anything, all of a sudden her lips stopped uttering the prayers and the rosary fell from her lifeless hands or fingers, which indicated that she was no more. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. So as she was no more, they mourned at her death. Mourning means to cry at the death of someone. So they mourned for some time and then they left her alone, lying on the ground, and went to arrange for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We spotted halfway in the courtyard, all over the veranda, and in her room, right up to where she lay dead, was stiff, wrapped in the red shroud. Thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirping. So by the evening, they made all the arrangements for the cremation ceremony, which is the last ceremony of a dead person, and they went to her room with a stretcher in which she was to be taken for the cremation. The sun was about to set and her room and the veranda were filled with the golden light of the setting sun. But they stopped halfway in the courtyard because they noticed hundreds of sparrows scattered all over the veranda till her room. They were just sitting, they were not even chirping, they were absolutely calm and quiet. We felt sorry for the birds and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. The sparrows took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. So they felt sorry for the poor sparrows, and as the author's grandmother used to do, that day his mother brought the bread, broke them into small pieces as the grandmother used to do, and fetched the sparrows. But the sparrows did not pay any heed to it. And when the dead body of the grandmother was carried off for cremation, they just flew away quietly without even eating those pieces or crumbs of bread. The next morning, the sweeper had to sweep and throw those dry bread crumbs into the dustbin. So here, the author Khushwant Singh ends this lesson by emphasizing upon the fact that love begets love, means love is reciprocated with love, whether it is by human beings or birds and animals. Love is a universal feeling. So dear students, please share your doubts and feedback about the chapter and explanation. Like and share the video with your fellow mates, and don't forget to subscribe my channel English Medium. Thank you and take care.